I there's a book called The Law of Success. You may be familiar with it. It's Napoleon Hill. And there's a quote in there that right after my wife died, it made me really mad. And it goes something like this. I'm going to paraphrase. It says, for every trial or tragedy or challenge we face in our life, there's a seed of equivalent or greater value, right? And when I read it, I used to believe that, right? I thought, yeah, for everything that happens in my life, there's a seed of equivalent or greater value, right? So my job is to experience that greater value or equivalent value, right? Of that difficulty or that challenge or that trial or that, adversity, right? Well, after my wife died, I thought, no way. There's no way that there's anything that's equivalent value or greater value than that. There's no way. There's just absolutely no way. That quote is wrong, right? And just this past month, David, I found myself back in that book and I read that quote again. And this time when I read it and it said, for every challenge or trial or difficulty, there is a seed of equivalent value or equivalent or greater value. And I thought, wait a minute, a seed, right? And that word stuck with me. There's a seed. It's not a full-grown plant. It's not a full-grown flower. It's not a full-grown tree, right? But there's a seed of equivalent value. Our job with seeds is to nurture them, right? How do we nurture the seed of equivalent value? And I may not even see the full bloom in this life, right? I may not get to see the fruit or the tree or whatever that seed of equivalent value is, but if I nurture it, right? And I go back and I think, you know what? I'm going to nurture that seed. And really the nurturing is really where we experience the joy.
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. Have an amazing author on with me today. We're going to be talking about his book and his story. And when I saw the post to connect with the guest today, there's something about his post that resonated with me and with my family. And I'm really interested and excited to have Kyle on the podcast. And we're going to be talking through his book today. So Kyle, welcome to
Living the Next Chapter. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Great to have you here. So tell us a little bit, first of all, I like to ask this for everybody, where are you in this big world of ours?
I'm in Boise, Idaho, but I'm originally from Dallas, Texas, the inner city of Dallas. So I get accused of having a Texas ghetto accent, combination of those two things.
Good. I love it. How long have you been in Idaho?
I want to say, I'm not great with numbers, but I would say over 15 years now. So okay. I have two sons that are on the autism spectrum. And when they were first diagnosed early on, we realized the big city of Dallas may not be a safe place to raise them.
Interesting.
And we ended up moving out to the country for a while in Texas, but we're not country folks. We're more city people.
Yeah.
And so we kind of did a nationwide search, and Boise kept coming up as a kind of a safe haven. And when we moved here, I remember thinking, this is like going back in time 50 years to Leave It to Beaver days, right? Because Boise was still this hidden gem.
Mm.
And so it's been a great place to raise our kids. That's kind of what got us here.
Nice. That's great. I always like to kind of hear people's journey about where they end up in life. And that's interesting. I'm glad you made that move for your family's sake.
Yeah. As we had to make a few sacrifices. I owned my own business back in Dallas. And as we talked about it, we realized pretty quickly that the autism and all that brought along with it was probably going to be a little bit more important than me working 80 hours a week in my own business, right? And so that gave me the opportunity to go to work for somebody else and come back into the home more, spend more time and regain the trust of my wife, I think, as being a good dad and a good husband. So
it's amazing. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your author journey right off the bat. I'm always curious to find out what life was like before you even thought about writing a book, because that, for me, I've never written a book, so I'm very curious about that, because that's where I'm at. And I know
Right.
some of the listeners are also new authors who are on that process of just starting the journey of writing. So take us back before a book was not even in the cards for you. And kind of how did you go from there to here? Like, tell us a brief idea of how that happened.
So I think probably where it started for me was it didn't take me long to realize that a plan that wasn't written down really was just hope, you know? And so as my wife and I were raising our kids, I got very good at documenting kind of the experiences we were going through. This is for my own personal use, right? Experiencing what was going on and my plan, my written plan for addressing it the next time it happened, right? I'm not this kind of guy that likes the world to smack me around, right? And it's going to smack you around no matter what. That's just the way it works, right? But I've always considered the fact that if I get smashed with something one time, then I should probably go back and say, that didn't feel really very good. What lesson can I learn? How can I approach this the next time so I can manage it better in my own life? And I realized pretty quickly that writing down not just the story, but my approach to how I was going to face it next time, and maybe the tactics I'm going to use or the way I'm going to see it. And that's really where it started for me, was just documenting a lot of my own, and basically kind of like a diary, right? Here's what's going on. Freaking out or flipping out is not really helpful. Screaming at my kids is not really helpful, right?
Yeah.
All these things. And what am I going to do next time? And so for me, a lot of it became just the documentation of a plan, right? For how I want to address things were challenging in my life. And I think that's where it started. And a few years later, Facebook kind of became a thing. And when I was talking to people, I would share experiences with them and they would say, wow, you seem to have really organized your thoughts on that. And I would say, yeah, I've written it all out. And they're like, what? Can you show it to me? So I started posting some of those things on Facebook, and the response was huge, right? I mean, people would comment and say they disagree or agree or hated it or loved it. And it really got me in the habit of like posting articles and posting, documents and all these different things and letting people see. And that kind of led me down the journey of realizing, and really, I think if I look back on my first bit of writing, it sucked, and I think that's the same with all of us, right? We first start doing something, we're going to suck at it pretty much.
Yeah.
Right. But the more you do it, the less you suck at it, until you do it so much that maybe you don't suck at all anymore. Right. But there's this process you have to go through from the start, right? Where you just start to learn how to do it. And then you get to where you're okay at it, right? But for me, it was posting things online, letting people see and read them, and giving me feedback. And it did two things for me. One is it let me know what people wanted to read and what it wanted to see, and what they didn't. That was important, right? The other thing is it helped me refine my writing style, right? Because the more you do it, the more you start to create frameworks for how you want to do it. And three, the feedback kept me writing, right? Because I liked the feedback I was getting, and I never felt like I was sitting down to write a book. I felt like I was sitting down to write a page or two about something. And then eventually you have a book, right? You end up with, a complete from beginning to end, book ultimately. And so that's really kind of how my journey started and how I got to, I think, where I'm kind of at now. So
That's great. That's great learnings for people listening. Just to start, I think we get so caught up in, I want it to be great. I want every word that comes through my fingers on my keyboard or through my pen to paper to be excellent. And it's not going to happen right away. It's a muscle, right? You have to develop that muscle.
Sure. Yeah, I completely agree. And it's a muscle that I didn't really, if I look back on my first book I wrote was called Thrive in Chaos. It's on Amazon and I wrote it with my son. And I look back at it now and I hate it, right? I wish it wasn't there to be bought because it just wasn't where I am now. If I went back and rewrote it, I would probably say the same things, but I would rewrite it in a way that was so much more efficient, number one, and number two, I think impactful. Right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you learn as you go. So
absolutely.
there you go. So, okay, your newest book that we're talking about today, this is what struck a chord for me was there was a mention somewhere about your 30th anniversary and some the details around things that happen in your home with your wife and stuff. And when I read that and I read it to my wife, we both just sat there and because we just celebrated our 30th anniversary. And so it was very timely for us to see that come across the screen. And that's what really caught my attention. So can we talk a little bit about the title of the book first, and then let's jump into the story because the story is amazing. And I have so many questions for you as an author and through the story. But let's start with the title of the book and kind of take us through a little bit behind the scenes of this book.
So the title of the book is Facing My Biggest Fear. 180 Days of Surviving and Thriving After the Death of My Beloved Shelley. And that's the title of it. And so, I mean, and that says a lot, right?
Yeah.
We had just celebrated our 30th anniversary in June of 2021. She passed away in October of 2021. And so part of my coping, I just mentioned previously, I'm not the kind to just let things beat on me, right?
Yeah.
And my wife and I had created what I believe, and she believed too, to be a top 1% happy marriage. And even a top 1% happy family because of the work we had put into it. And, when you make it to 30 and your kids start growing up, you start to see some of the fruits of your labors, I think.
Yeah.
And I was really at that point looking forward to, kind of growing old with my wife, right? I mean, and she was just 10 days, she got really sick. 10 days later, she was dead.
Wow.
And so part of my coping mechanism, and I have 6 kids, right? From the ages of 28 down to 13 at the time. And I knew pretty quickly when she passed away, I knew we weren't the first people that this had happened to. I also knew that this had destroyed families. And it was common for an event like this to destroy families. My wife was so loved by all her kids, and I'm sure all moms are.
Yeah.
But my wife everything she touched, she beautified, right? She beautified the lives of her kids. She was like an angel on earth, right? And so when she passed away, I realized pretty quickly this tragedy I'm not letting this ruin our family, right? I'm not going to do it. Ain't happening. And so I thought, and it really helped me to write down my thoughts and the ideas that came to my mind and the plans I had. And in my book, I talk about some of the struggles and the pain and how we manage those things. And for me, it was my diary for the first, I wrote almost every day. I would sit on my couch. By the way, the first 30 days, I couldn't even go in my room right after she passed away. I couldn't face an empty bedroom without my wife. And so every night I would sit on the couch where I would sleep basically. And I would write about her and experiences we had and how I was going to face it. It wasn't enough for me to say, I'm in pain, I'm suffering, I don't know what I'm going to do, right? I would say I'm in pain and I'm suffering and I got to figure this out. So I'm going to write out how I plan on addressing this with my kids, for myself, how I'm going to manage myself emotionally and spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I wrote those things, I just posted them every day, almost every day for 6 months. And that ended up being my book, right? It was just basically my personal diary for the next 6 months. Yeah.
So take us, as much as you feel comfortable, take us through those 10 days. I can't imagine those 10 days in such a concise, confined period of time to go from 30-year anniversary and joy and celebration and reflection, and now we get to celebrate our family, to what's happened. What happened in those 10 days?
So, when your spouse goes into the hospital and you have kids, you comfort them. Everything's going to be okay, right? And that's what you tell yourself. That's what you're going to believe, right? There's no benefit to believing anything else, right? There really is no way to. And so a lot of what I was doing was, making sure my kids were okay, checking on them consistently, and they would ask me about mom, and I would go up and visit her pretty regularly. And it was during COVID. And so she couldn't be visited by very many people, right? It was pretty hands-off kind of a thing. But I remember my wife passed away on a Monday, and the Friday before that, I like to think I have a relationship with God, right? And I always have, and I try to be pretty in tune with that. And the Friday prior to her passing away, I just had this intuition that she was gonna die. And I realized that some steps needed to be taken if she were going to pass, that I should probably prepare my family for. And so in my book, I talk about this. I called all my kids together one Friday night, and I said, hey, no matter what happens, here is what I'm going to do. And I would invite you to join me, right? And basically it was, I'm going to work to live in a wonderful, happy, joyous way. And I'm going to, no matter what the outcome was, I was going to serve them and serve the world and try to be the very best person I can and keep my spirits up, right? And just be the kind of, basically I was going to rely on my relationship with God and have that support. And I challenged them and said, I want you to join me, right? I want you to be a part of this, because there's a lot of things we can do here. And 99% of them will take us down a path of pain and struggle and suffering, and we may never recover. There's one path that I'm pretty sure will help us get through this and still thrive as a family and still be in love as a family and still feel her presence on a consistent basis. And so that Friday night, I could see, I think they knew as well. I've never, it's something we may talk about down the road.
Yeah.
Me and each of my kids individually.
Yeah.
But I think they could see it in me. Right. And so a couple of days later, she passed away, and it's still a shock, right? I mean, it was still a shock to all them, but certainly setting the stage for it not to ruin our family, but to bring us closer together was, I think, again, I'm a planner. I'm a writer. I'm not going to sit there and take it. Yeah. Certainly I'm not hoping and counting on her passing, but I am, if it does happen, I'm going to be prepared. I'm not going to let it. I believe in facing the storm with confidence and faith, right? And courage.
Yeah.
I don't believe in getting caught up in the storm and letting it take us wherever it wants to, and ruining our chances of joy in our lives. And so, that was, those 10 days, I think we were all kind of the first days of it, we were thinking she's going to be okay. Right. I mean, you always do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then when it got down to brass tacks and I set them down, I think they knew, and we planned. They knew I was planning and making a plan, I think, to take care of them, to take care of the family, to thrive through whatever experience it was going to be. So
it's amazing how resilient kids can be, even at different ages. But it had to be really tough for them to see you go through this yourself, but to miss their mom at the same time. What did you see? What did you see in your kids that kind of made you go, "Wow, I didn't know this was in them"? Like what came up from that?
One of the pieces of my plan was to go out with each one of my kids individually for dinner once a month, right? With 6 of them, that's it takes a little time, right? But just to check on them and talk to them one-on-one and really have them express to me if they're mad, if they're angry at God, tell me, right? There's
Yeah.
no, and I told them this from the very beginning. You don't let anybody tell you how to feel, right? How you feel is how you feel.
Right.
And everything and anything is reasonable for you to feel how you feel, right? I said, now we have a choice to make in the direction we go, right? Do we let those feelings overcome us and take charge and our emotions become more important to us than our lives, or do we control our thoughts and manage our emotions and certainly give grief its time, right? We're going to cry together. We're going to talk about things that are going to upset us and be painful, but we can't let that be our default, right? My kids, one of the things we decided as a family is is you're going to have to visit the pain and suffering, but you don't want to live there,
Yeah.
right? And so it kind of became one of the things that we talked about is take time to visit, right? When the time is right, take time to visit, give it its time. But also know that your mom wants you to live your best life. She wants you to be joyous and happy and continue, right? And so if you get sucked down the rabbit hole of pain and suffering and it becomes your default, you're going to damage yourself and you're going to damage your future, right? And so, we a big part of it is not to be afraid or ashamed or realize that tragedy happened, and it's capable of taking you one direction or the other. And you really have to, for us, we really had to decide what direction we were going to go and start writing our own. We talked about this a little bit previously. We are the authors of our movie.
Right.
Our movie can be a tragic story, or our movie can be a triumph over tragedy. We get to write that, right? The events in our life are going to happen. We don't get to write what events happen. We get to write how we manage those events and how we see them and how we frame them so that they can either, tear us down or propel us forward. And so what I saw in my kids was they were looking at, I think they spent so much time worried about me that they didn't really, and I'm sure they all had their own amount of grief, but my kids also knew, and people aren't going to like when I say this, but my kids all knew, all 6 of them knew, if we were on a boat and it capsized and the boat is going down, and I can personally save all 6 of my kids, or I can save my wife, they're going to die because I'm saving my wife, right? My kids knew that she was 1A, 1B, and 1C, and the rest of them, I love them more than anything.
Yeah, yeah.
But she was the thing, right? And so I think they realized very quickly, and they loved that. I think my kids loved that, right? It gave them confidence in our marriage, in our relationship. And so some people don't care for that. They don't like hearing that, right? But that was our reality. And so my kids, they were checking on me regularly. They would come to me and say, "Are you doing okay today?" And really asking that question, not in, how your friends say, "Hey, how you doing?" "I'm doing fine."
Yeah.
They would say, "Listen, I'm pulling you aside and I'm asking you, are you doing okay?
Nice.
Do you need anything, Dad?" And I think my kids just shocked me at their resilience, right? And their willingness to buy in to, we have some choices to make, and we choose joy. We choose happiness as a family. And just watching them do that has been amazing, incredible.
I like it. So talk to the readers now of the book. They have purchased it. It's either coming in the mail or they're at the store. It's in their hand, and they're excited to have this book and crack it open and start reading. Before we read a single word, from you, the author, to the reader, what do you want us to know before we jump in and start reading this book?
Well, first of all, I think I want everyone to know that, no matter how you live your life, your tragedy will strike. We're all going to, it's part of life. Those things are part of life. and trying your hardest to avoid those things or having anxiety over those things are going to affect your ability to function at your highest level, right? And so I think more than anything, I want people to know, if I've had a lot of people that have expressed to me as they've read the book that it is a triumph over tragedy, right? It's a very clear, I tell stories about before we got married. I tell stories about our relationship when we got married. I tell stories, right? For me, I wanted these things to be known about our relationship for my kids and for me and for other people. But what I don't do in the book is I'm gonna tell you that I'm in pain and suffering. But before I finish each section of the book, you're going to know what I'm going to do to escape and to live my life to its fullest, right? So I'll never leave you in a place of pain.
Yeah.
I'm going to obviously every time leave you in a place of joy and happiness and knowing, right, that if you face tragedy, you're not alone, and there's a way to address those things in a way to live your life to its fullest and be happy and be uplifting and be buoyant, right? No matter what kind of things you face. So I hope that it's a triumph over tragedy. I believe it is. It's funny. I continue to write to this day. The book is like 200 pages, right? And it's pretty, and I don't know how many posts there are, but I guess, in 180 days, right? I want to say almost every day I wrote something, and I've even got the day I wrote it. So you'll know day one what I wrote.
Wow.
The day after my wife passed away, right? And you'll know every day what was on my mind, what I was thinking about, what I had to get off my chest, how I was going to face the future with courage and faith and hope. And so that's what you're going to get with the book.
So have you taken opportunities in the past to sit on that same couch, open that book, and flip to a certain date, and you're back in that moment again?
I haven't done that. But my book is I also, as part of my book, I also crafted a plan, right? So I've got it. Are people going to be watching this as well as listening?
Yeah, I can release the video for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me I'm going to show you something here. It's so not only did I write for my own sake and to document how I was feeling, but my plan is in here, right? And there's different categories of things that I'm going to do and how I'm going to do them. And if I face challenges, how I'm going to face it, right? Page after page, there's probably 30 or 40 pages just in here.
Yeah.
And these are not my stories. These are worksheets, right, that I create because I'll give you a quick example. After my wife passed away, everything reminded me of her.
Yeah.
Everything. You spend 30 years with somebody, that's your life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so there were things that would shake me to my core. I remember going to Walmart for Thanksgiving, which was about a month after she passed. Thanksgiving's coming up. I go to Walmart to buy a turkey. Well, I've never bought a turkey before.
Yeah.
My wife had, right? I'd never bought a turkey. And so as I'm walking around just in a fog, right, I'm thinking, I've never bought a turkey before. And I'm just in pain, right? Mm-hmm. And then I see an old couple, holding each other's hand and supporting each other. And I got physically angry, not at them, but I got angry because I wanted to grow old with my wife.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And it made me mad. And I thought, you know what? That is not, being mad at an old couple for their love is not helping me in any way, shape, or form.
You're right.
Right? And so I came home and I wrote up a worksheet and I thought, how can I reframe this so it's beautiful for me? Because I can't get mad every time I see an old couple. That's just not going to be good.
No.
It's not effective, right? And so I wrote up a worksheet and I said, the next time I see an old couple, I'm going to approach them and say, I think it's beautiful what you two have. And I'm going to reframe it in that shape, because if I can't do it, I want somebody else to do it, right? I want it for somebody. And so I would go to Walmart, or I'd go anywhere, and I'd see an old couple, and I would move towards them, right? I reframed that experience.
Yeah.
So instead of pain and suffering and anger for me, I wrote up a worksheet, and it's in this book here, a worksheet that says, here's what you're going to do. First step, if you see them, you're going to recognize what it is and face the anger and say, you know what? I'm not going to let that be my default.
Right.
I want my default to be love and kindness. And you're going to walk over to them and you're going to say, hey, can I ask you a question? How long have you been married? Can I tell you something real quick? I think it's beautiful. I'm watching you support each other. I think it's beautiful. Wow. And you should have seen the joy on their faces.
Right.
Right. And the joy it gave me to see them and to feel that love that they had. It changed that perspective for me. Right.
Yeah.
And so every time something new would happen that would shake me up, I would create a worksheet and reframe it so that I could see the beauty and joy that she brought to me and that's still in this world, even though she's not here with me. And so this book here is full of, first time I went to Costco, I'd never been to Costco by myself before, right? There's so many things that would shake me up.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't need to be walking around this world with tears running down my face, right? I needed to face things and be grateful for those events and the beauty that she brought to my life. And what that did is it uplifted me. And in doing so, it helped me to uplift other people through the process, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think when I'm faced with a challenge, I'm only faced with it once, because I'm coming home and I'm writing a worksheet, right? And I'm gonna go to work and try to figure out how to turn this into an emphasis of joy or happiness or love or whatever the case may be, because what that does for me is it energizes me and it gives me strength and it gives me courage and it gives me hope. And then when I come home and my kids see me, they see that pillar of strength, right? Now, I'm not saying there aren't days where I go hide and I fall apart.
Yeah.
Because we need to do that, right? We need to give that its space and its time.
Yeah.
Right. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to let that pain and suffering and discouragement, I'm not going to let that become who I am, because it'll damage me and it'll damage my family and it'll damage the world. Right. I heard, David, a guy one time say, a guy who he's a producer for movies. And I heard him in an interview say, you know, the villain and the hero both have the same backstory. He said the villain is beaten and battered and bruised and treated unkindly and spat upon. And, you know, his world is turned upside down and he faces these tremendous challenges. And when he grows up, he says, you know what? The world is a terrible place and I'm going to get revenge on the world. Right?
Yeah.
And he says the hero is beaten and battered and spat upon and treated unkindly. And the hero grows up and says, I'm never going to let this happen to anybody else. I'm going to save the world from that. Right? And it really struck me, because we're all going to face that tragedy, right? Yeah. We can come out bitter and angry and discouraged and bleed that into the world. Or we can come out with hope, right? And with joy and try to change our futures and other people's futures, right? And that's going to bleed out into the world. And so I think a lot of what I catch myself doing is I catch myself in anger or frustration, or even, you know, this month it'll be 2 years.
Right.
And I still wake up some mornings and I go, what the crap, man?
Yeah.
This is not right.
Yeah.
I did everything I was supposed to do. I tried so hard. I built a world where we loved each other. I go through this list of things and it says it's just not right that this happened. There's a million other people that should have been taken from this earth before her.
Right.
It is not right. And if that gets a hold of me, then I bleed that into the world, right? And so it's a battle I have to face. And I think we all have to face on a really consistent basis on smaller things consistently, right? I mean, we all get cut off in traffic and it can turn us into something we don't want to be.
Yeah.
And we bleed that into our families and into the world if we're not careful, right?
Yeah.
Just small, simple things. And so for me, a lot of what I've done and a lot of what I try to do is say, I'm not going to bleed that, right? I see what's going on. I'm catching myself in that state and I don't want to bleed that. If I need to go somewhere and get it out of my system, I'll do it on my own time and not bleed that into the world.
Yeah.
What I'm going to bleed into the world is joy and happiness and hope and kindness and love and all those things I know that'll make people happier, that'll make the world a better place, right? And it's going to do me so much good,
Right.
right? I feel so much better when I approach the world like that.
I love how you've seen through an obstacle and found the opportunity in the moment. You know, you've changed that whole dynamic. And it's like, because I think when we see an obstacle like hate or fear or anger, all those things that sit in front of us that impede us going forward, you didn't get frustrated and stop. You climbed on top of it, and that was your next level up to the next thing for you. That's an amazing picture. And I'm with you at Walmart and Costco, watching you walk up to strangers and engage with them. I have my cart. I'm pushing along behind you going, who's this guy? What's he doing? But that moment, they weren't anticipating that kind of interaction with you that day. They're just shopping. So to have you reach out and do that for that couple, I'm sure they talk about it often.
You know, there's a book called The Law of Success. You may be familiar with it. It's Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
And there's a quote in there that right after my wife died, it made me really mad.
Mm.
And it's called, it goes something like this. I'm going to paraphrase. It says, for every trial or tragedy or challenge we face in our life, there's a seed of equivalent or greater value. Right? And when I read it, I used to believe that, right? I thought, yeah, for everything that happens in my life, there's a seed of equivalent or greater value, right? So my job is to experience that greater value or equivalent value, right? Of that difficulty or that challenge or that trial or that, adversity, right? Well, after my wife died, I thought, no way. There's no way that there's anything that's equivalent value or greater value than that. There's no way. There's just absolutely no way. Right. That quote is wrong, right? And just this past month, David, I found myself back in that book and I read that quote again. And this time when I read it and it said, for every challenge or trial or difficulty, there is a seed of equivalent value or equivalent or greater value. And I thought, wait a minute, a seed, right? And that word stuck with me. There's a seed. It's not a full-grown plant. It's not a full-grown flower. It's not a full-grown tree, right? But there's a seed of equivalent value. Our job with seeds is to nurture them, right? How do we nurture the seed of equivalent value? And I may not even see the full bloom in this life, right? Yeah. I may not get to see the fruit or the tree or whatever that seed of equivalent value is, but if I nurture it, right? And I go back and I think, you know what? I'm going to nurture that seed. And really the nurturing is really where we experience the joy. Sure, the flower is beautiful and it's fully bloomed, but if we put in the effort, right, to work to nurture that seed, whatever that seed may be, to really work at it and to give it effort and to give it care and to give it, right, all those things, then we don't necessarily need to see the bloom, right, because we're in the process, we're in the journey, right? We may not, I heard Jim Rohn is another business philosopher, and you may have heard of him too.
Yeah.
He says, it's not the achieving of the goal that's the real reward. It's who you become in trying to achieve the goal, right? It's who you become. And so it really, I had to reframe even that quote and say, hey, if it's a seed, I can nurture that seed. I don't ever believe there's anything that's going to happen in my life that's going to be on a par with the pain I've experienced. There's going to be no joy that's even with the par of the pain, right? I've got to be okay with that because I don't believe it.
Yeah.
What I do believe is if I can nurture that seed, then maybe, just maybe, other people, or I can experience joy too, and I can see other people experience joy, and I can contribute to their happiness. And so for me now, it's just in the past month, David, I found it, and it's reframed that for me too. So now I don't have to experience an amount of joy that equals the amount of pain. Yeah. But if I nurture that seed, I'm doing my job, right? And I know, like you said, that old couple, I know I can feel it, right? That it changed them, and it changed me in helping them to see that. And that's really the key for me.
So can I jump off your seed illustration there? I have something to add to that. I think that'll give you even one more layer for you.
I'd love that.
In podcasting, I'm trying to encourage people to think about the impact of their words by having a show. As an author, you have impact by writing your book. Our story is impact. And in podcasting terms, people look at numbers. They want to know how many people listen to their show, how many people buy my book. And that's a number that we use as a metric to see if we're being a success or not. And there's a quote that I heard, it's not mine. It says that you can count the number of seeds in an apple, but you can't count the number of apples in a seed.
Great quote.
And for you, like, you can measure how many books you sell, but you can't measure the impact of the book for the person who reads your book. Because that person reading, their life could be different. And then their children's life is different. And then their children's life is different. You can change the course of an entire family or someone's story just by sharing yours. And you can't measure the impact because you can't measure how many apples come from one specific seed. I
love that. And it's another reason why I think people should document their story.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you write it once, and, even if I heard one guy one time say, you can't go out there and try to change the world. He said, you change one person.
Yeah.
Right? And with a book or with anything that's evergreen, a podcast, it's there, and who knows how many people it can impact, but it's not really what's important is impacting one person. Yeah. Right? But the most important person I think you can impact is yourself, right? I mean, here's what's interesting is as I'm writing my book, I'm wanting to be a person, right? I mean, I've never gone through this before.
No.
I know who I want to be.
Yeah.
I know who I aspire to be in this event. But as I wrote in my, as I wrote my thoughts and feelings and desires, I think I really became, right? It helps me to become that person that I want to get, right? I mean, and it's part of writing is crafting your movie, is crafting your own life's story.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really, even if nobody ever reads it, I think the value in you writing it for you is tremendous. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine handing a book. And by the way, we have a copy of I've got a couple of books on my shelf downstairs. My kids will go down and read them, and I'll see them reading our family's books. And they'll come to me and say, I never knew this, Dad. Why didn't you tell me this story? I'm like, I didn't even think about it, right? Mm-hmm. There's so much power in that, in leaving that legacy, because, the things that you leave behind, you really don't leave a lot behind, maybe pictures and maybe books, right? Yeah. I mean, that's how people are going to remember you. Maybe memories, but memories fade.
Yeah.
Right? It's so powerful to be able to document those parts of your life, especially the trials, the tragedies, those difficulties. And again, I have a framework when I write now, and maybe that'll help the authors out there. I do what I call hook, story, and the point of the story, right? Yeah. So hook, story, point of the story. And so I want to start out, when I write an article, I'll start in the most dramatic way possible, right? And I'll try to say something. You go, whoa, what does that mean? Right. Like that's when my son took a swing and hit me in the head and made blood come out of my ear. Well, you're going to read that story.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
And then I jump back into the story and I say, maybe I should explain, right? Here's the kind of and then I tell the story. But at the end, I always want to leave what I learned, right?
Yeah.
We can we're all going to have trials and tragedies and difficulties. And we're all going to get something from it. We can get bitter and angry and frustrated, or we can get the good stuff, right? The good stuff is you learn, you grow, you expand, you stretch, you impact other people, right? And so at the end of every story, I always want to write, here's how I'm going to make this work for me.
Yeah.
Right? Here's what I get. And what it does sometimes, I think, is just in writing the story, and you can even do this and go back and write a hard moment in your life. And then say, here's what I'm going to get out of it. Maybe you haven't even got anything out of it. But if you say, here's what I'm going to get out of it moving forward, and you write it down, right? And you maybe post it or show it to somebody. Now you've committed to a new movie script, right? Instead of sitting in your pain or never forgiving somebody that's something that happened 20 years ago and they don't even know, you're still mad at them because they don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Say, here's what I'm going to get. I'm going to forgive them. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to do this. And I'm not going to make these mistakes, or I'm going to change the way I approach this, or I'm going to reframe these events so that they benefit me.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, you really change the way you view the world, right? Because we're all going to see and face challenges, right? How is it that the villain becomes the villain, the hero becomes the hero?
Yeah.
Right? Same story, different outcome.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we get to decide the outcomes, right? Yeah. And what a beautiful thing that is that we get to do that.
I love it.
We get to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to ask, these worksheets you flashed to us on camera and you flip through, I'm like, please tell me somehow those are available to us as readers of the book, as people wanting to be part of your community. Is that a resource that's available to us as well?
Yeah. So here's what I will do for you. Some of those are more personal and I don't share them all.
Yeah.
Because some of those things are, just not things I really want to talk about.
Yeah. Some
of my thoughts aren't really very good, right? Mm-hmm. It's not really, I don't want to, you know what I mean? But I want to change them. But I will tell you this, and this will be very helpful. So I've created what I call a COST formula, COST.
Okay.
So the C stands for challenge. Okay. And on a piece of paper, I write C in the top left-hand corner, O next to it, S and T. Okay. The C stands for challenge. And when you face if you ever get frustrated or angry or discouraged, that's a challenge, right? Identify it. That's the first thing. So I would come home and I would write, the challenge is I see an old couple in Walmart and I get mad, right? And I want to fill out all the way it's going to cause me trouble, right? Because I want to get leverage on myself to change, right? So I'll say, if I'm angry at this old couple, it's going to damage me. I might take that anger to my family. I might take that anger out on the road with me when I'm driving. Yeah. I might spiral into that anger. You know how we spiral, right?
Yeah.
We go down these rabbit holes of depression and discouragement. And so I write all that stuff on the challenge side. And then under O, I write objective. Mm-hmm. What is my long-term objective, right? When I face this challenge, my objective there is I really want to see those old couples for what they really are, beauty and joy, right? And love. And my objective is to see them differently, right? So you write out the objective, what you want long-term from the challenge, right? Because we're going to face challenges. Now, maybe it's just not to get mad anymore. For me, that was a big part of it. I didn't ever want to get mad anymore about it. I wanted to switch it into love and kindness. Now, the S is for strategy and cost, right? And what I want you to do is name your strategy something silly or funny or goofy, because then you'll remember it, right? I called it the old fart strategy. Is what I call it. Because now you'll never forget it, right? And and my tactics were, number one, what I was going to do, the step-by-step I was going to take every time, right? Number one, I was going to recognize how I felt, right? So you have to catch yourself first, right? Step number two is I wanted to put myself in a spirit of love, right?
Mm-hmm.
is I wanted to change that from anger to feel love and move towards them and then approach them as step 3 of my tactics in a spirit of love and then give them a true compliment. Okay. So 4 tactics. Number 1, recognize the anger. 2 is put myself in a spirit of love. 3 is approach them kindly, right? And give them a beautiful compliment, right? So those are my tactics, right? So what that did for me is the next time I show up and I see an old couple and I feel the anger, I say, oh, wait, what's my old fart strategy, right? What's my old fart strategy? And I go, okay, I got to put myself in a state of love. I stand up straight, right? Use my body,
Yeah.
start trying to see the beauty in it, right? Get there, approach them, give them a true compliment. And from there, it was just beautiful, the things that would happen, right?
Yeah.
And you can do this. This cost formula works with any challenge you face, whether it's raising kids, whether it's driving in traffic, right? Getting mad in traffic doesn't do you any good.
No, exactly.
Right? My long-term objective is to be patient in traffic, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to come home and be mad at your family and because you got stuck in traffic or somebody cut you off. That doesn't do you any good. And you're not going to get out of the car and whoop anybody. Come on. We're not doing the world, right? So the strategy is traffic. What's the traffic strategy, right? And you create your own tactics. Now, your tactics may not always be perfect. Sometimes you have to adjust them. But by writing them down, challenge, objective, strategy, tactics, by writing them down and putting them on paper, you go, okay, I got it, right? And now, no matter what the challenge is, I have people all the time see me face things and they go, man, you're so patient. I say, no, I have a strategy. They say, what? I say, I have a strategy. They say, what do you mean you have a strategy? I say, well, when somebody yells at me, I have a strategy. It's called the yell strategy. And I say, hey, are you okay? And it diffuses people.
Wow.
Right? Are you
That's
okay?
powerful. Yeah.
I can tell something's bothering you. Obviously, it's not me. Or maybe it is. And if it is, I sure am sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. That's not what I'm trying to do. But if I upset you, I sure am sorry. Tell me what's going on, brother. What can I do to help? Right? It changes. People go from anger to happy to just like, oh, what? And it diffuses situations. And then I make a friend almost immediately, right?
Yeah.
And we connect with each other, and there's beauty in connecting with people, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you never know what's going on in these people's lives. You never know what's tipping them in anger or frustration or discouragement. Or, if I see people with their head down and they look like they're in pain, I have a strategy. I'll walk up to them.
Yeah.
And I'll say, is it okay hey, listen, I'm sorry to bother you. Is it okay if I ask you a question? And if they say no, I say, okay. And I don't approach, right?
Yeah.
But if they say, yeah, I say, is everything okay, man? And sometimes they just want to talk, right?
Yeah.
They just want to tell somebody their pain. And I'll say, dude, I hear you, man. Right? What can I do? I mean, it's amazing the way when you're faced with challenges. I only get angry or frustrated or discouraged once. Then I come home and write up right? I write it up and I go back into the world and try to spread beauty and joy, right?
Yeah.
And it's not hard if you take a little time, right? Even if it's on a piece of paper, write it up, right? Internalize it, start using it in this world. And man, we can just start spreading more joy in this world.
I can just imagine someone using this principle that we just explained. And you did such a great job with this, by the way. I wrote it all down. I love it. Yeah. I just imagine you trying to figure out how to buy a turkey at Walmart, completely overwhelmed with everything you're thinking and feeling, and that person walking up to you going, hey, Kyle, can I ask you a question? Are you okay? What that would have done in that moment while you were staring at turkeys going, I'm completely overwhelmed. I miss my wife. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I'm failing. I'm angry. I'm bitter. What that would have done, right?
It would have changed my world, right? I'll share this. I know we're butting up against time here. I'll share this with you because I think it's my kids. My kids think I think they appreciate what I do because they know my stories, right? But my kids one night wanted to run to Walmart. It was getting later in the evening and I was kind of tired. And so I pulled into a parking lot. I said, you guys go in, I'm just going to stay in the car. So my two, I have twins, they're 15. They run into the store and I see a guy sitting on the curb. He looks like he might be a homeless guy. And I see him sitting there and he's just has his head down, you know? And I thought, I'm really kind of tired. I really don't want to do this, but I have a strategy, you know? I, I'm, I have to. I don't really have a choice, you know? So I got up and walked over and I said, hey, excuse me, would you like company for just a few minutes? And he said, yeah, that'd be great. So I sat down on the curb next to him and I said, tell me your story. How'd you get here, bro? And he starts sharing with me, stories of abuse and, getting kicked out of school and time in jail and, addiction. And the kid's just pouring his heart out, right? And I said, hey, I said, what's your plan, man? Have you got a plan? He says, you know what? I was just talking about that with somebody. I think this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to try this, and I'm going to do this. And I could see, hey, buddy. He went from, this is my son, he went from discouraged, sitting on the curb, to his head was up. And he was talking to me about how he was going to face the world, right? And I really didn't say anything. I just was listening and asking more questions. And about that time, my twins come walking outside and they see me sitting next to this character. And the grins on their faces were so big, right? And I said, hey, those are my twins. I got to go, man. Thanks for chatting with me for a few minutes. And he's like, dude, thank you. And I appreciate it. I said, you need a ride somewhere? He's like, no, I got a ride. They're coming. I'm sitting here with you. And my kids, we got in the car and my twins said, why are we not surprised, Dad? And I said, he looked like he could use a little company. And I wasn't doing anything,
Yeah.
And I, like you said, you don't know how many, what did you say? You said, you don't know the number of seeds in an apple.
Right.
Right. But you don't know how many apples are in a seed. Right. And I've driven by guys before that looked rough and had troubles. Right. And I'm thinking, I wonder, people don't get there overnight. There's a story. And maybe they need help and maybe they don't. Maybe they're just, I don't know, but I don't know their story unless I know their story, right?
Yeah.
There's different ways to look at the world. And I think looking at, I had a friend one time say that some people see the world as a happy, joyous place filled with love and kindness. Other people see the world as a bitter, angry, discouraging place. And he said, same world. Right? What's the difference?
Yeah.
And the difference is very clear to me, right? If you live happily, if you live kindly and you try to express love, you live in a happy, kind, loving world. You get it back.
Yeah.
I got love from a homeless guy in a 10-minute conversation, right?
Nice. I love it.
And I got that. That uplifted me. I got that. That was what I got out of that encounter. And
amazing.
Because I just got up out of the car and walked over there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's a great story. Tell us, Kyle, your family's coming home. I want you to get back to your family. Tell us, where do we connect with you? Where's the book available? What do we do now to get a copy of the book and to share a copy of the book? How do we do that?
So I posted and I want you to put a link to the book. It's free.
Okay.
I want people to download it and read it.
Okay.
And connect with me. My contact information is in that book. I do call myself the Driven Autism Dad. I have a YouTube channel where I do videos on there as well.
Okay.
If parents have kids that are on the autism spectrum or they know of anybody. And so I can be contacted on YouTube through Driven Autism Dad. But yeah, download the book, give it to everybody you can. I'm really not interested in selling it as much as I am spreading those seeds as far and wide as I can.
Good.
I will caution those people that download it though. My first book I sold, I remember I went to a conference and I gave 30 copies away. And when I went back and asked those people about it, only one person had read it because it was free. The next time I went out and did a conference, I sold 30 copies. 27 of the people that bought it had read it out of 30.
Yeah.
So if you download it for free, I want you to attach a value to it before you download it. Pretend you're spending $25.
Yeah.
Because then
Good.
you will read it. Because if you just download it and don't pretend you spent $25, you'll never read it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help me or you or anybody, right?
Right. Yeah.
I want people to value this. Now, if you want to send me money, because that makes you want to read it, go ahead, figure out a way to send me money, open the book and find my name. You can, but that's not required, right? I don't want you to do that necessarily. Unless you think it'll, or if you read it and it's worth $1 million, send me a check.
Send you a check. We're totally open for that. Totally open. Right. So we will put all the information in the show notes as well, Kyle, so people have access to you. You're coming back to Dad Space for another recording. You can talk a little bit more about the book and your dad journey as well. So that's another accompanying episode. Excited to have you back over there as well. And Kyle, thank you so much for making time. The cost strategy, I'm using that today. Thank you for giving us that. That was a great thing to do.
I love it. Thank you so much, David. That would make me, people ask me after my wife passed away, what can you do for me? Yeah. Here's what you can do for me. You can love your wife a whole lot more. You can make sure she knows it, and you can spread joy. That would be how you could help me.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for being part of this. Everyone go check the show notes. Make sure you go and give Kyle some love and thank him for his time and for giving so much today. Enjoy your family this afternoon, Kyle. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, David.
Thanks for being part of the podcast again. Appreciate you investing time in the show and you for listening this far. Thank you. One thing to keep in mind is we are looking for help and some support for the podcast. If you are able to help support our show, our little podcast show here, we can go over to livingthenextchapter.com and all the instructions will be there to help support the show. It takes about $30 to $40 a month to do this, just for the hosting and all of that other stuff that we pay for. But if the show is giving you any value and you're enjoying what's happening here, would love any kind of support that you can offer. That would be great. And you being here and sharing the show helps us grow, helps us get great new authors on the show, connect with other listeners, and build community. So whatever you can do to share this show today, I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here for Living the Next Chapter, and I can't wait to share the next one with you. Talk soon. Have a great day.